Good evening. Good evening. This is an awesome crowd that is here in front of me, and then we also are so excited to have the first ever and the largest live broadcast for Teach for America. For those of you watching across the country, we have over 1,000 folks watching us across the country, including my family, hopefully. And over 100 folks, looks like well over 100 folks here in the office, and so we're just so excited. We are, for those of you out there, Music City, the state capital of Tennessee, the home of hot chicken, which we got to enjoy, and the Athens of the South with almost 20 colleges and universities. We have a rich history as a gateway to change in the South, led by the love for justice of students at Fisk, Vanderbilt, and American Baptist College during the Civil Rights Movement. We have a hopeful future with some of the fastest immigrant growth in the country, representing the promise and potential of thousands of families and students. And we have rural communities just 30 minutes away with a rich identity of their own. I am Shani Dowell, the proud leader of this region. Thank you. I'm also a Houston 2006 Corps member, and I have to get a shout out. One of my co-teachers at Fonville Middle School texted me right before this because she was excited about being in Nashville, so also shout out to Houston. Nashville began in 2009 with just 50 Corps members and 60 alumni, and in 2014 we have 200 Corps members and 385 alumni serving more than 13,000 students and calling Nashville home. We will soon hear from our co-CEOs, Matt and Elisa, but first we'll have a few special guests who we're going to hear from. First up, I'm going to call Stacy Crescencio. Stacy is a high school senior at Cane Ridge High School. I know we have some Cane Ridge teachers here. I first met Stacy at a panel at Vanderbilt University about education and justice, actually that Jalicia Singleton put on, who's here with us. She was there with her teacher, first-year Corps member Lizette Garza. So Stacy, please come on up.
I would like for you all to close your eyes and imagine an environment that I like to refer to as a restricted environment. Imagine a place where ignorance surrounds you, where there is no peace or tolerance, and where irrevocable crime is prevalent. Think of a home in which two parents who received at most a middle school education exchange harmful words with one another because they never learned a more effective way of communicating and solving problems. Think of the stubbornness, disarray, low morale, tension, and stress composing the environment of inferiority. This is a restricted environment that I have lived in for years. You can open your eyes now. As a young girl, born in Los Angeles, California, to parents living far below the poverty line, things have never come easy for me. They had no money to provide for me expensive tutoring services or to sign me up for camps. So on their own, they tried to find ways to teach me how to act and make it in the world. But they struggle to pay rent. They can't afford to buy their own house. And with these pressures have caused emotional damage to my siblings and I. Though I don't always agree with their approach and would hate for my children to have to struggle the way we do, something we have in common is that we all know how different their lives and character would be if they had received the education everyone deserves. Now, it is possible, as I share this with you, that some of the words that come to mind are pity, sorrow, disadvantage, lack of opportunity, poverty, and ignorance. But don't be mistaken. Although my educational experiences and those of my parents have been as those words describe, I have made a choice to reframe my story from that of disillusionment to one of empowerment. I could choose to think of my story through the lens of only if. Only if I were rich. Only if I attended a private school. only if I didn't study in a restricted environment. Only if I was a potential candidate for top schools in America. Only if we didn't have all these problems that lead to the achievement gap. Only if I were white. In fact, I thought this way for a long time, until I decided to embrace these worldly flaws like educational and economic inequity and use them to my benefit. How, you may ask? How can this be possible? How can a student like me learn from a life of poverty and poor education? I can tell you how. I was lucky enough to have some incredible teachers who made far greater an impact than anyone else could. They invested time, convincing me that I had the intelligence to accomplish great things in this world, to become a great public speaker, to work out challenging math problems, to think critically. They had a passion for teaching and loved their students dearly. They didn't look at poverty as an undefeatable barrier and knew perfectly well that everyone, no matter their background, had the potential to become successful. They taught me to see this in myself, and because of them, I began to see the barriers as fuel instead of impediments. One of those teachers is Ms. Garza, my sociology teacher this year. She has been a blessing in my life and strengthened me academically, but also as a person. She encourages me to remain humble and to never think that I hold the answers to everything. She reminds me that there is always something to learn, always something to improve in oneself, and most importantly, to never conform to the injustices in our world. She's taught me to stand up for what I believe in. That is why, instead of complaining about the current education system, I've decided to do something about it by pursuing a career in education policy, with the perseverance, grit, determination, passion, and love that I have learned through my experiences growing up in Nashville. Now picture this: an environment in which our focus is no longer on our own survival, but on the betterment of the world and its people. Contempt is not present, but all that is tolerance and acceptance. The people I love are no longer restricted by ignorance, but are free to reach their full potential. Contributing to the world does not require money, but instead an excellent education that is available to everyone. This is the environment that I have dreamed up, that I envision through the power of education. Thank you.
You all will see Stacy on a college campus near you next year. As you can see, she's already an incredible person and an incredible leader. And she's actually going to be sharing that speech with TEDx for Students coming up soon. So we're so thankful. So the folks in this room and our kind of collective community represents diverse perspectives and diverse folks. And I'm so excited to bring up one of our alumni who serves as an inspiration to me and the 1 million students he serves through his role as Commissioner of Education for the state of Tennessee. So I'd like to welcome Commissioner Huffman up to share a few words.
Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be here, and as you all can see, we have some incredible students here in Tennessee. And if you don't wake up here in Tennessee amazed about the potential of the kids, then you don't have a pulse. I wake up every day thinking about how we can do right by the 1 million kids who live here. And I want to welcome you all to Tennessee, which, as you may or may not know if you're watching remotely, Tennessee is the fastest improving state in the country in educational outcomes. 22 years ago, when I joined Teach for America, I was sent to Houston. And when I showed up for orientation, back in the early days of Teach for America, they stuffed us 2 to a bed and 4 to a room at the Comfort Inn. And It was, as we were scrounging around for meals and trying to find a place to live, impossible to foresee that two of my roommates in that Comfort Inn crowded suite, Mike Feinberg and Dave Levin, would go on to start a one classroom program that would eventually blossom to be 100 KIPP schools across the country, serving tens of thousands of kids. It was impossible to imagine that two of my housemates in Houston when I lived there would go on to teach 20 years. They certainly didn't go in thinking they were going to do that. It was impossible to imagine that other friends from around the country from the 1992 Corps would go on to be major district superintendents, that they would run for and win seats on school boards, that they would become professors and writers, that they would become leaders in every field. It was impossible to foresee all of that. But what was true then and is still true today is this: Teach for America is a rare institution, and it's rare because it endeavors to seek the right answer. Teach for America strives for continuous improvement. It actually wants to know what's working and what's not working. Lots of places think they want to know, and then you start to look, and it's really hard. Teach for America actually wants to know. They want to know what works and how do we do more of it, what doesn't work, and how do we do less of it. Teach for America has the courage to engage in self-examination. It has the willingness to reach out to people around the country and hear things that they are saying, things that sometimes are uncomfortable. And it has the leadership to strive for excellence. Those things were true 20 years ago, they're true today, and I'm incredibly proud to be an alum of Teach for America. I'm also really excited that we have the co-CEOs of Teach for America here with us tonight, and you all will get a chance to hear from Matt Kramer and Elisa Villanueva Beard, two of my friends, a little bit later. But I'm incredibly proud of their leadership and the work that they have done to listen to people around the country and to think about how do we take Teach for America into the next era. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to Nashville, welcome to Tennessee, and I'm really excited to be a part of this. Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, we're going to hear from Annie Driscoll. Annie teaches at Dan Mills Elementary School, which is right down the street from me, and I see my neighbor in the back also. She's in her 7th year of teaching, was a New Mexico Corps member in 2004, and so we're super excited to hear from Annie.
Teachers, I hope you had a great day with your students, and for those of us in Nashville, a relaxing snow day. When I was asked to speak about why I teach, I got to thinking about some of the things the parents of my students have told me this year. At a parent-teacher conference earlier this year, after receiving a report on how well his son is doing, one father who works nights to support his family said to me, "This makes it all worth it." In the holidays, I received a note from a mother who said, "I cannot thank you enough for bringing the love of learning out in my son." Recently, I received a text message from the mother of a student who just recently joined my class. She said, "My daughter has been talking about how wonderful her day was all night, something she hasn't done all year. Makes my heart happy. Thank you." And all of this made me realize even more fully how much every day matters when you are a teacher. Every day, I have the chance to make a 6-year-old feel loved, or challenged, or successful, or love learning just a little bit more. Some days, I fail, but some days I succeed, like when Stella tells me, "Mrs. Driscoll, you're a good friend." Or when Joey explains his mental math. Well, everyone in this class knows that 10 plus 6 is 16, so then you know that 9 plus 6 is going to be 15. Or when Waylon shows me where he just must add ellipses to his writing to build suspense. Or when Isaiah tells me about how he wrote a haiku on his way to school. And it is because every day matters that teaching is so tough. But that's also what makes it so incredible and so important. The other day, during word study, as we worked on our R influence vowels, I used the word work in a sentence. I work at Dan Mills. My students were confused. Is this your work? They asked, and they're right. Teaching is so much more than just work. To all of you who teach, as you probably already know, you are doing something that truly matters, because we know that what it is really going to take is a great teacher, not just every day, but every year. Thank you, and I hope that tomorrow is full of successes for you and for your students.
Thank you, Stacy, Kevin, and Annie. So I'm going to read some program notes because this is when we're getting down to business. So in a moment, Matt and Elisa will give their remarks. Following that, we're going to have a Q&A session. So particularly for you all out on Twitter, please tweet your thoughts or questions using the hashtag. We'll also have some time and open it up hopefully to some audience members. And then after the Q&A with Matt and Elisa and a short transition, we're going to be finishing up with some of the exciting work happening here in Nashville. So now I'm just going to go ahead and call Matt Kramer up, and he's going to start us off. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Shawnee, and thank you to the Greater Nashville team and community here for welcoming us. Stacy, thank you for sharing those thoughts. They were absolutely incredible. Kevin, thank you for everything you shared. It is such inspiration to see what you're doing for the people of Tennessee and the children of Tennessee. And Annie, thank you. Thank you so much for your story. 9 years ago, I was facing one of those two roads diverge in a wood moments. When I graduated from college, I had gone to work as a management consultant. I'd wanted to work on the challenges facing big organizations. But 7 years later, I was overcome by the feeling that America wasn't moving in the right direction, and that I wasn't holding up my end of some cosmic bargain to contribute. When Wendy called me that year to ask if I would come work for Teach for America, it felt like a moment that the universe was speaking to me. But it didn't take long before it was hard to hear it over the din of practical considerations. I was scared. This felt like a very big life decision, a move from a place of comfort and lots of options into a very serious commitment. But as I considered the idea, I thought back to the years I spent in New York, where my wife, Katie, was a core member. She taught middle school in Washington Heights for 3 years, and she would come home every day and collapse from physical and emotional exhaustion. But then, every day, she would get back up and start planning and grading. She knew that she and her students were doing something special together, and it fueled her. I thought back to the projects I worked on for the New York City Board of Education. It was full of incredibly talented and hardworking people who cared deeply about children. And yet somehow the system normalized the academic struggles of so many children. Somehow the system just never seemed to change. But then I also thought back to the pro bono projects I did with Teach for America. And most of the people I met through Teach for America, or through Katie, somehow resisted that urge to call their daily challenges normal. They were angry, and they were hopeful all at once, and it inspired me. I couldn't get myself all the way to an unqualified yes, so I took a 2-year sabbatical from my job to work as Teach for America's Chief Program Officer. And those 2 years were enough to make me understand my end of the cosmic bargain. In 2007, I made the decision to jump, to make a lifelong commitment as all of you have. And I have never regretted it, not once. Today, I know I am right where I am supposed to be, here with you, fighting alongside our many partners for our kids, our communities, and for our integrity. Teach for America is now 24 years old, and like any other 24-year-old looking at a changing world, we have got some questions and some doubts and some fears. Are we making an impact? Are we on the right path? Are we the very best we can be? How should we change to get better? In our first year as co-CEOs, Elise and I spent a lot of time thinking about and asking that last question. How should we change to get better? We've been hearing input from critics and friends, and we've started to lay out a strategic direction with that feedback in mind. But before we talk about what's next, let's look at where we are today. Today, we've got 24 years of doing this work behind us, 24 years of listening and 24 years of learning. Today, we're in 48 regions across 35 states, with thriving alumni communities in many more places. Today, we have 11,000 core members, and our core is more diverse than ever before. 39% of the 2013 core identify as people of color. A quarter are first-generation college students. Our 32,000 alumni are part of the vanguard of a growing movement committed to spreading educational equity across America. And over the past 3 years, 85% of them have responded to our surveys, so we have a pretty good idea about what they're doing. Approximately 10,000 of them are teaching. Over 750 are school leaders. Over 1,000 are assistant principals or deans. Over 600 are instructional specialists or teacher coaches. 185 are school system leaders. 70 are in elected office, and more than 100 are elected union leaders. All in all, nearly 2/3 of 32,000 alumni remain full-time in education. Others work in social services, law, medicine, other fields. They take with them their belief in the potential of children and in the power of education, and they contribute in so many ways. Nearly 90% of the 32,000 alumni of Teach for America are working full-time for our kids. 90%. Today, our core members are teaching in 3,200 schools across 400 districts. And overall demand for core members is up 40% over the last 4 years. We are working hard to meet that demand, but many of our most promising prospects are wondering whether they should join this effort. Some things don't change. It has always been hard to convince people to make this choice. And today it is particularly hard. They are getting more job offers. They are seeing educators under so much stress. And they are actually hearing that the world would be better off if they went to Wall Street instead of teaching in our country's highest need classrooms. Teach for America has changed, though. We are not the same organization we were in 1990. At 24, we're more diverse as a core and a staff. We invest 4 times as much in the training and support of every single core member. We're doing more than ever to teach and practice cultural responsiveness. We're investing more in early childhood work, in special education, in STEM. And our Teach for America community has built meaningful and lasting relationships all over the country. And in our first year as co-CEOs, Elise and I have continued to embrace change to move us forward. Coming out of the listening tour, we made 5 commitments for getting better. These commitments started with Elise and me because over the course of our tour, you, our students, and our communities told us they were important, and we are excited to see the broader organization embrace them. We commit to being better listeners. We commit to tailoring our approach to the unique needs of every community. We commit to tempering our data-driven nature with more attention and appreciation for the human stories that tie us all together. We commit to aligning our placements with local demand, not national plans. And we commit to investing more in the support of our core members. You also told us that it was important to take stands that reflect our values, and we have. On the DREAM Act, on admitting DACA core members, on common sense learning standards, and we're going to continue to speak out on issues that affect our students, whether it's poverty, crime, or healthcare, or the right for all students, regardless of their race, or their class, or their gender, or their religion, or their ability, or their sexual orientation to learn in a safe and affirming environment. We've also been working hard this past year to give regions the flexibility they need to respond to their local context. We want as many decisions as possible being made as close as possible to our kids in our communities. At the same time, we've been reshaping the role of our national staff, so our entire team is focused on learning from the 48 places we work and on supporting our local efforts. When we have 48 regions fully empowered and engaged, we will be better able to live all 5 commitments. We have come a long way. I think there is a lot for us to be proud of. And at the same time, there is much more to do. We need to keep our minds open to change and innovation as we continue to find new and better ways to do our work. To encourage this kind of innovation, we're setting aside up to $4 million in a breakthrough fund this year and each of the next 4 years to fund pilots that could lead to significant improvements in our approach. And tonight I'm excited to share 2 such pilot programs. First, in the days ahead, Elisa and I will reach out to some of the nearly 2,000 college juniors who have already applied to the 2015 Corps, inviting them to take part in a year-long preparation program during their senior year. With this extra pre-service year, we will give them more time to absorb the foundational knowledge that all teachers need, more space to reflect on the role that they're about to step into, and more opportunities to directly practice the skills they'll need as educators, skills like delivering a lesson or managing a classroom. Different paths into the classroom are right for different people. We know that, and we believe this approach will meet the needs of many future Corps members. We also want to do more to support our alumni educators. These days, most Corps members teach beyond 2 years. But we want more people to make that choice. This summer, we're launching a series of programs to provide ongoing support to alumni teachers in their 3rd, 4th, and 5th year. These pilots will take place across 12 regions and will range from teacher practice communities led by alumni to Teach for America staff dedicating time to coaching alumni teachers just as they coach people in the 1st and 2nd years. Teaching beyond 2 years cannot be a backup plan. It has to be the main plan. Soon after I joined staff full-time, I started to work with a group of local leaders to bring Teach for America to my hometown. At that time, the dominant narrative in Minnesota was that things were good. We coined the term there, actually, that all the kids are above average. No one was talking about the devastating inequities, that the graduation rates for African American, Latino, and Native American students in Minnesota are dead last of all 50 states. 7 years later, it is central to the conversation in Minnesota. Back then, there was maybe 1 school showing great results for low-income students. There was no alternative certification. There was no community-wide advocacy effort. There was no teacher voice for change. Now there are at least a half dozen schools in the Twin Cities where students of all backgrounds succeed. And all the other things I just said are happening too. Minneapolis is not such a big city. And when I look ahead, I can see so clearly the day when every child gets the education they deserve. It is coming. Of course, Teach for America isn't the only force behind all of this. But like in many communities, if you take away the contributions of all of the Teach for America Corps members and alumni, we would not be seeing the progress we're seeing. Change at the scale our students need does not happen often, and it does not happen by accident. If we're going to see the day when every child has access to an excellent education, if we're going to live up to our national creed, it is going to require so much leadership. It is going to require leadership from students, families, community leaders, facing down educational injustice. It's going to take leadership from tens of thousands of people who haven't yet joined this effort, including many who haven't even finished high school yet. And it is going to take leadership from all of you, contributing in all the ways you do in the classroom, in the field of education, in our communities, and working on the staff of Teach for America to make us better, to make sure that this change we're working towards will not always be in the future tense, and that we get there in our lifetimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your remarks and for grounding us in where we are and where we're headed. Tonight, I want to bring us together. I want to unite around our shared passion for this work. I want to share the experiences that have shaped me and tell you why I am personally committed. My mom came to the United States from Mexico at the age of 17 with an 8th grade formal education, and my dad is a first-generation college graduate. I grew up in McAllen, Texas, where you will find 85% of the population is Mexican-American, and where just 19% of adults have a college degree. Though our values are very strong and rich and an incredible culture, Hidalgo County is one of the poorest regions in this nation. That shaped me. At 18 years old, I met a different America when I went to college. DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana, was nothing like home. But that wasn't what troubled me. Well, it was a little bit troubling that folks did not know what tamales were, or that people literally thought the Taco Bell was real Mexican food. But in all seriousness, I'd been a top scholar at my high school, but I quickly realized how academically underprepared I was when I got to college. I literally did not know how to take notes, how to read so much text, process what I was supposed to, take the main point and be able to debate it in a seminar-style room with my peers the next day. It was confusing, overwhelming, and maddening, but it shaped me. With a lot of hard work and support, I made it through that first semester. I actually ended up doing well at DePauw. I figured out that I did in fact belong on that campus, and so did all the other kids that I grew up with. But many of them hadn't graduated from high school, let alone made it to college. The realization of that injustice, it shaped me. Joining Teach for America shaped me. Teaching does something to the heart that a book or lecture could never do. I taught beautiful, talented, and incredible children for 3 years in Phoenix, Arizona, and their potential and ability was undeniable. After that, I headed back to the Rio Grande Valley to lead the Teach for America region, and I grew it to scale. I saw the incredible work of our staff, our core members, our alums, some at my very own high school. They were doing incredible work alongside so many others. They really did good work. These are the things that have shaped me. That's my truth, and I'm living it. And it's why I will not back down from my beliefs. I want to tell you about them tonight, the things I won't back down from. I know I'm not alone in what I believe. I will not back down when folks say the education system is fine as it is. It is simply not. It does not support all children to reach their potential. It was not designed to do that. It was designed to reproduce the status quo. It was designed in willful exclusion of children of color, and it was designed to prepare kids for an economy that has long since changed. So when people say that it is fine as it is, I won't back down. I know better because I know my own story. And I know this. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, in a class of 25 Latinos, 4th graders, 20 won't meet proficiency in English. By 8th grade, nearly 90% of African Americans don't reach proficiency in math. Pacific Islander students are half as likely to graduate from high school than the national average. Native American students are more likely than any other group to not have access to AP courses. And nationwide, less than 1 in 10 kids who grew up in a low-income community will make it through college. The facts tell me clearly that things are not fine, so I won't back down from that. I will not back down when folks suggest that some kids, not their own, of course, don't need high standards because they are probably not going to college anyway, or because we're setting them up for failure. No. I've seen what my students, Brianda, Carlos, Oscar, and Anayeli could do. So when it comes to high standards and high expectations, I will not back down. When folks tell you that kids of color can't reach the same levels as white kids, do not back down. When folks try to tell you that kids in low-income communities can't reach the same performance as affluent kids, do not back down. Yes, poverty is crippling. Poor health care is debilitating. Child hunger is all too real. We know that kids need good health care and good nutrition. We know that kids need safe cities. It doesn't mean that we stop teaching with high expectation. It means we keep teaching with high expectations. It means we must advocate for our students' basic needs not being met and unmask the violence of the inequity. We must keep teaching, keep our expectations high, keep finding the systemic solutions and game-changing innovations. We must do everything we can within education and outside of it to help our students reach their dreams. Our kids are not numbers. They are not statistics. They are children. And they need hope, inspiration, and unwavering belief in what they can do. Teach for America was built on that belief. We will not back down now. We can reach educational equity in our lifetime. It must be done. So when folks try to tell you that it can't, do not back down, because we know better. You know your kids, and you know your truth. We have evidence that all students can learn. We're hearing more success stories each day, and you don't have to take my word for it. Visit any of the hundreds of public schools across our nation that are putting children of color from low-income communities on a different path, on a path that the naysayers never expected. Tell them to visit your classrooms. When folks say it can't be done, we will not back down. And as for Teach for America's role in this, we are a force for good. We will not back down from that either. We are acknowledging our shortcomings and are starting to work to address them. We're not perfect, far from it. The thoughtful, critical feedback we get is a gift, and it's helping us evolve. But I'm certain of this: we are a force for good. I want to be clear. With every step, we'll remind ourselves that we are not saviors. We are not martyrs. We are not the solution. We are part of a powerful movement that started long before we got here. There is a deep history and context we have to respect. And our communities are our greatest assets. Our parents, families, veteran teachers, neighbors. Teach for America must stay true to that vision, because all of us are pushing toward one day. So I want to tell you tonight that I believe in you, I believe in us, and I believe in Teach for America. I know that Teach for America is a force for good because I've seen it in my own community, my own hometown, my own high school. I believe in us because I believe in our teachers. I know it's often a thankless profession, but teachers, I believe in you. We believe in you. Thank you for all that you do. I believe in teachers like Kathy Hollowell-Makel, a 1998 DC Corps member who teaches kindergarten at Simon Elementary, and who was DC's Teacher of the Year in 2013. Hopefully, you all caught her as one of the First Lady's guests at the State of the Union. I believe in us because I believe in Huang Pham. Wong is a 2011 Corps member and a first-grade teacher at Kemp and Power in South Los Angeles. He joined Teach for America because he was taught by a Corps member himself. And last year, he won the Suleiman Award. Wong's students are academically strong, but they're also at 6 and 7 discussing critical issues of race and justice. I believe in that. So when folks tell you that we're not contributing, don't back down. Kids are learning in our classrooms, and that's important. Tell them your stories. Tell them to come visit your colleagues. Point to the study of the Department of Education and Mathematical Policy Research. Show them the studies right here in Tennessee. They don't say we're perfect, but they do say we're making a difference for kids. Parents and students will tell you the same thing. A good teacher is a good teacher, no matter how they're trained or where they come from. And we've got good teachers. So when folks tell you that Teach for America is expanding without bounds, growing without regard to what communities need, explain. It's simply not true. This year, roughly a third of our regions reduced in core size. We get bigger when we have to grow, and we get smaller when we have to be smaller. We place teachers only in positions that are already open, only when principals and districts want to hire them. And it's working. Over 90% of those principal leaders would recommend another principal to hire our teachers. When folks tell you that Teach for America is anti-union, just give them the facts. Remind them that thousands of our teachers are union members. Remind them that over 100 alums of ours hold leadership positions in teacher unions across the nation. That is the truth. And when folks tell you that Teach for America Corps members all look one way, all come from the same background, don't back down. We're far more diverse than the teaching profession as a whole. The majority of our first-year teachers, 55%, are either Corps members of color or came from a low-income background. And when folks say that our teachers are temporary, introduce them to the great alumni spending their 5th and 10th and 20th year in the classroom, the more than 10,000 alumni teaching today. Remind them that our first-year retention rate is higher than the national average, that the most common profession of our alumni is teaching, and 2/3 of all of our alumni are working in education. And no matter what, this is not a 2-year commitment. 2 years is just the beginning. Alumni become lifelong educators and advocates, fighting for children, fighting for justice. We are in this for life. Our alumni who don't teach still educate, or they tackle poverty, healthcare, and other challenges that the educational world cannot take on its own. Teach for America staff, Corps members, and alumni have diverse thoughts and diverse opinions, but we are anchored around one common belief, that all children deserve an excellent education, and we won't back down from that. Like so many of you, I fell in love with the kids in my classroom, and it changed me forever. No one can ever take that away from us, and for as long as we live, we will always have real skin in this game. So we will keep fighting this fight. We will keep working. We will keep teaching. We will keep learning. We will keep improving, committing, questioning, innovating, loving. We will keep at this for as long as it takes. We will not back down. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. And I was just back looking at Twitter. There's lots of excitement, and it's really fun to read all of the tweets. Have to give a quick shout out. I know Ian will love this. He's in China, and he's watching from China, so that's really, really fun. But there's so much that stood out, and even seeing what people were quoting on Twitter, it's really neat. Definitely thinking about where we are as a 24-year-old organization. I think there were a lot of people who connected to that idea because we've all either are or have been at that stage. And this idea of really kind of embracing who we are and not backing down, I think that's stood out a lot to folks. I'm going to go ahead into the questions and answers. And so, again, we're going to do a few that we got from over 50 folks who submitted questions beforehand. Then we'll have a few questions from the audience, and then also hopefully we'll be able to take some questions from Twitter. I'm going to start with one question I've already seen that Ed Week actually already posted about one of the pilots. Lots of questions about the pilots and excitement. I mean, overwhelming excitement. So I just love, Matt, for you to share a bit more about the pilots.
Does this work?
Yep.
There we are. Look at that. If we're saying hi to people on the TV, my
I've
little
started
girls
the shout
are
outs,
watching.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Caroline and Charlie. So the pilots are being developed right now. Is the shortest version of the answer. For the pilot that's going to be working on pre-core development, we're going to start with questions. We're going to start with questions to recent core members about the things they wish they had more time for, and to our institute staff and to our MTLDs, our teacher coaches, about the things they see in new core members that they wish they had more time for. And we're also going to be looking to partners. We're going to be exploring partnerships with traditional schools of education, and also with some of the really exciting new online ventures that we're seeing popping up. And so we're going to be working on this over the coming months to figure out what the contours of that are. For the alumni program, we're actually going to try a bunch of different approaches. This is one where I feel like we don't have a good sense of what the answer is. And so we're going to have regions try a dozen different things, from asking alumni, how many people would like a dedicated Teach for America support and coach in the way that we provide support to second-year teachers? How many alumni would like to be part of groups working for National Board Certification where we facilitate that? We're going to ask what alumni in fourth and fifth years want, and regions across the country are doing that right now, and we're going to put that together. We're going to be helpful. We're getting ready for the coming year, obviously, which is 6 months away, and we'll just keep everyone posted as the ideas develop.
Awesome. So it's exciting. Plug for Nashville for those pilots. So this question comes from Brian Alexander, a DC 2008 Corps member. As an alum, I found myself increasingly having to defend or explain misconceptions about the organization. What is Teach for America doing to listen meaningfully to its critics and address many of its negative perceptions? EVB.
Sure. So what I would start off by saying, well, first, let me say hi to my kids, Langston, Malcolm, and Marshall. Hey, guys, and my husband, Jeremy. Extra points. See, hopefully they're watching. Okay, so back to the question. So what I would say is, first of all, I feel grateful for the thoughtful critiques that we get, as I said a little bit early, and just appreciate that. And to that end, I have personally been spending a lot of time with some of our most fierce critics, because I really have a desire to want to understand people's perspectives, learn from what people are saying, and most importantly to me, find common ground. The only way I believe we're going to make progress is if we find the common ground and work productively together to move forward. And then finally, what I would say is, we are ramping up our communications effort, generally speaking. We are doing a better job of just telling our story, being able to stand very clearly on what we are and what we stand for. You will see, hopefully you are experiencing just more blogs and more activity on social media. And then finally, what I would say is there are lots of myths and inaccuracies about who we are and what we do. And so we just launched an on-the-record website last Friday, and I just would encourage all of you, when you have questions or you read something and want to know what's the other half of the story, visit our website and get the information.
Thanks. So what we know, recruitment deadline just passed, so we'll love to hear, and this is actually from Dan Goldie, who is a Teach for America staff member. What is the recent news about our core size for next year making you think, and what does this make you think about Teach for America's scale in general?
So we don't actually know the core size for next year. It's worth mentioning because we just had the fifth deadline a few days ago, and we have to meet all those folks and select them. But we now have gotten all the applications in. We had the second highest number of applications we ever had, over 50,000, but not as high as last year. And we are not going to get anywhere close to the 6,300 core members that our principals and school districts around the country are asking for. This has me thinking about schools and kids. I've talked to a lot of principals over the years, and I know the principals think that core members are a really important part of their strategy for making their schools better. And I think about those folks that I talk to and think about telling them they're not going to get all the core members they want, and it's really painful to think about. And Shani, this of course we were together this morning, and so I was asking her questions about what was going on in Nashville on this front. And Shani was telling me that here in Nashville, the school district's growing because of demographic trends. Charters are growing. Everyone's asking for more core members. And Shani was thinking that we were going to go up to 135 core members this year. And we're not going to go up to 135 core members this year. We're not going to get close to that. And the most painful thing is what happens in those situations is the late vacancies, the ones that typically traditional districts figure out in August. That they had vacancies they didn't know they had. Those are the things that get hit hardest in those situations. So, I'm just thinking about the dozens of principals here in Nashville that are not going to get the core members that they're asking for. Obviously, there are other factors that determine our scale over time, to the second half of Dan's question. Our capacity to pull it off and our program strength and whether we're able to raise the money. And obviously, we'll think about all that going forward. But I really think at the core, I think the thing is that people on college campuses are listening to us, all of us. And I think the question is, are we telling kids on college campuses what we're hearing directly from our principals, which is we need people to do this. We need our most talented people to make the decision to teach.
Yeah, I've said multiple times today, I'm still in denial. And so Matt's telling me to stop being in denial, but I see so many of our core members and so many of our alumni, and I know what each of you means for the students you teach and for the community. Yeah, I mean, it's real. It's real. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to question and answer. So if you're in the audience and thinking you might have a question, now is a good time to start thinking. This question. We've heard recently that Newark Public Schools has plans for layoffs, budget being a major factor. Teach for America has been cited in the discussion as a cheap labor source. We can place this local drama into the broader quagmire of teacher layoffs, union bashing, and Teach for America's perceived nefarious role in it all. What's our official stance? And this is from Carlin Myrick, who is a New York 2007 core member.
I'm glad she asked the question. So here's what I would say. First, these situations are incredibly complex and very nuanced. And I think we just always have to, keep ourselves committed and challenge each other to not get caught up in the rhetoric and the politics of what's going on and really seek to find the facts is the first thing that I will say. The second thing I'll say is change is really hard. And there's a lot of change happening in Newark right now. And I don't know all the details. Of course, I read everything, but I hold myself to a really high standard in judgments because I don't live in the community. But what I will say is that I do know change is necessary because I do know what's happening in the schools as far as the actual outcomes that kids are reaching. So I know change is important, but I also know it's really hard. In terms of Teach for America's role in all of that, what I would say is that Teach for America is one source of teachers that we bring to schools, to public charter schools and district schools. And we ask our principals if they want to hire our teachers. They have a right to interview and hire them. And we think that choice of principals is really important. And parents are picking where they want to send their kids. Parents have a choice in where they send their kids. And for me, I personally deeply respect any choice that a parent makes and stays out of that discussion.
Okay, so we are going to now create a space for audience questions. If you have a question, now's the time.
Oh, there we go.
If you can say your name and where you teach, what you teach.
Okay, hi. I'm Alicia Woodson. I teach 4th grade at Glencliff Elementary School, and I work with the EL students. So something you guys were talking about is the different types of, changes you're making and things you're committing to. And I guess like something that I've really like been struggling with is, I affect my kids all day when they're at school. But I was just I live with 3 other TFA teachers. So we were talking about, oh yeah, it's great, we have a snow day, but our kids aren't eating today. So what I really have trouble coming to terms with is how can I help my kids outside of school? Like how can Teach for America partner with different people in the community that can affect our kids after school with sports, with tutoring and stuff like that, like resources that they don't normally have access to?
I mean, I'll say that I think it's a really tough question and a very real question. We often talk about how, kids go to this high-performing school, but then they can get shot walking to school depending on the neighborhoods in which they live, and that's all a reality of our kids, which is what creates the urgency for us to stay focused and keep coming up with these solutions in education, but then outside of education to support our teachers. I mean, what I would say is, I mean, as a teacher, I mean, I remember, my first graders not having dental care and realizing a lot of my kids had headaches in class, and I finally was like, what the heck is going on? And finally figured out, oh, it's because you have cavities all over on your teeth, and I realized, oh, my kids share toothbrushes with their 3 other siblings, and I didn't realize this. And so then, created a grant. I learned about this thing that was in the community, and got resources for my kids. And I just think we have to be creative. I mean, one of the big things that we are prioritizing is how to build community relationships and work with others. I mean, there are so many people working on this issue, and I think we need to do better to make the connections that we need all of those supports in our schools, because a thing that I think we've all learned is that our schools were not built with the capacity to meet all the needs of kids who are living in poverty and have just so many needs beyond the academics. And so I just think we got to do better at just continuing to build our capacity in that regard and ensure our communities know what our kids need and find that voice.
And there's a similar question from Twitter. B. Alexander, how can we better partner with all stakeholders in each community so we are seen as a value add and not a threat? And just want to take a moment to plug the Taking Action Fair that's happening this Saturday at our Leadership Summit, and that we're actually going to have different community organizations. And what you'll see is not all the community organizations will represent all of the needs of your students. And so both look at it as an opportunity to connect with what your students need, but also this is part of our theory of change, which is there are things that still don't exist that need to exist. And so I know we have some of our core members and alumni who are starting to think about what else needs to exist for our students, not just as students, but as people. So I'm going to continue that. I think we have time for another question. Yep, one more question.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Chris Winty. I'm a 2009 New York City Corps member. I keep hearing over and over again one of the main critiques of Teach for America is sort of the 2-year sprint, flash burn sort of mentality. And I see organizationally lots of effort to sort of mitigate against that. But does this initiative of offering beyond 2-year support, is that a recognition of the main factor of people leaving after 2 years being that they didn't have that? And should that be, I mean, should we even give space to that critique? Or is 2 years enough? I mean, should we have that as a goal, that we have more and more teachers staying longer? If so, does this initiative reflect good information that says, wow, that's really the reason why people are leaving after 2 years? Or could there be other things? So for instance, I taught for 2 years. I'm done. And not that this wouldn't be a useful program, but for me, that wasn't the deciding factor. Of course, that's one anecdote, but on the whole, is that what the data shows? Thank you.
You want to start?
I'll start, yeah. So thank you for the question. 2 thoughts to share. First is, I think we should separate out the question of the 2-year commitment from the rest of this. And the reason why I say that is, we do not believe people should come in and teach for 2 years and leave. We don't believe they should leave the classroom after 2 years. We don't believe they should leave the field of education after 2 years. We believe the way to get the most extraordinary people in on the front end is to tell them they have to commit for at least 2 years. And frankly, other ways into education, traditional programs, have a 0-year commitment. That's a different approach. We believe telling people they have to commit for 2 years on the front end is actually the way to get them to lean in and stick through what is going to be a very hard first year, which is why we see Teach for America people actually stay into their second year at a higher rate than other programs and other ways in the profession. There's a consequence of the 2-year commitment, which is it creates a mental break at the end of the second year that cause people to lift up their eyes and ask, what else do I want to do? And the reason why we're thinking about this approach to the program at the end of 2 years is we are trying to change the feeling of that break. We are trying to make the end of 2 years not the end of 2 years so much as the beginning of a longer term commitment in education, many people will be in the classroom the whole way. Others will be in there for more than 2 years, and at some point they will shift other things. And for some people, it's right that they leave right away. There are other things that are their personal calling. But that's what we're trying to change, is the strange break point that can occur in people's heads if they over-focus on the 2 years. That's what we're trying to change.
And just one thing I would add, it's also responding to the fact that already 60% of our teachers stay for a third year, so why not support them? And as I said, the most common profession of our alums is teaching, so why not put more resources toward that? And we support, obviously, people staying in the classroom, and obviously we need people doing a lot of other things. And so we're just responding to the context of actually what our alums are choosing to do.
So I'm going to ask one last question from Twitter, and then we're going to transition to our Nashville part. But this is a really interesting question. So Emily Welch asks, if Teach for America is taking a stand as an anti-racist organization, how is this reflected in the core member selection practice?
Well, what I will say, you should talk after I do. What I would say is that we are constantly, our selection model is as scientific as it can get. Obviously, nothing is fully scientific, but the way we come up with it is we study our very best teachers and what they're doing in the classroom and those that are having an enduring real impact on kids. And what we've learned over time is part of having an enduring real impact on kids is having a culturally responsive classroom is a really important factor. And so as we learn what characteristics our teachers have who are being able to educate kids fully and have this impact, we are constantly reflecting our own selection model and ensuring that the attributes and skills we're looking for are aligned with that. And so we have made and shifted and evolved, especially in the last year, to make sure that we're being fully responsive to that.
I'll just add, I don't want to declare that we are an anti-racist organization because I think it's patting ourselves in the back in a way that is not helpful. What I want to declare is that we have got to wake up every single day and ask ourselves whether we're doing everything that we can think of to fight the issues of race and class that are at the center of our work. And when we don't do enough each day, which we don't, because this is a very complicated problem, we got to ask ourselves why not, and then we got to come back tomorrow morning and we got to try again. As it pertains to our work in selection, we have a lot of things that we have historically done to work on making sure the issues of race and class are at the center of our admissions work. And there's also lots of thoughts people have shared over the years that says it's not enough. And so our admissions team is doing, I think, some of the most interesting work at Teach for America right now on this topic. For example, they're asking new ways of thinking about how do we capture the special knowledge people get from spending time in low-income communities that will shape their teaching practice in ways that actually predicts teaching performance. Because there's a lot of ways to do it that don't predict things, and that's not a really good way to decide who gets in. But it turns out there's actually some really clever things we can do, and so we're doing them. And we are getting much better at telling who's going to have the context and the cultural awareness to be able to teach effectively in contexts that may or may not be really different from them, depending on their background. We're working on other sorts of pilots and admissions as well to continue to develop our ability to identify people who are going to be comfortable taking the approach that we know needs to be taken. And we're always looking for new ideas. So if you were a recent participant in the selection process, either as a core member who was just selected or as a person who's just been a selector, and you've got ideas, you should send them in. The admissions folks are always looking for new ways to think about this problem, and they will eagerly embrace new thoughts.
We do have some of our incoming 2014 core members in the crowd tonight, so excited to have them. I imagine that answers to questions often kind of beget more questions, so I just want to use this time to encourage folks to reach out to your MTLD, your alumni team, someone in your region with follow-up questions, as well as continuing to tweet the questions as well. I am personally so grateful that we're part of an organization who has these conversations, who asks ourselves these difficult questions. The current education landscape has so much promise and potential, but we also know it is incredibly challenging. This idea of not backing down is really sitting with me, and it makes me think about Curtis Acosta, who came to Nashville a few weeks ago. Curtis Acosta started a Latino studies program in Tucson, Arizona, that was so effective at getting his kids to be civic leaders, critical thinkers, that naturally the state of Arizona tried to shut it down. Fortunately, Curtis has used that as an inspiration to go and plant seeds throughout the country. And so when he came here, I was asking him about his work as a teacher for 20 years and how did he benchmark the success that his students were having. And what he shared was graduation and passing standardized tests were for him and his students just the beginning. And then everything else that he was really doing with them came next. And so as I think about this idea, the first step for us is to not back down. And then I think about what's next in creating the opportunity for our students to fly. And so after this, we're going to transition, take a brief break, transition, and talk about some of what we've heard and how it's living out here in Nashville. So those of you who are at home, you'll see a kind of a quick transition, about 30 seconds to a minute. And then we'll hear from Marco Patton, who's going to start us off with what has become a bit of the unofficial 2011 Teach for America Nashville anthem. Marco is a proud alum of Fisk University, a teacher at Pearl-Cohn Music Business High School here in Nashville. So we look forward to seeing y'all in just a bit. We're going to take a break really quickly, and then we'll be back and hear more from our Nashville region. Thank you all.